Join me, New York Times bestselling author Lynn Vincent, as I reinvestigate the Terry Schiavo case for Lawless, a new true crime podcast from World Radio.
Good morning. It's Monday, May 16th. Thanks for joining us for Top Story. Just a word of caution. Today's story may not be appropriate for younger viewers. Well, on the full World Watch show, we'll take a look at the first image of a supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way. And then Taylor Hebert will show us a museum that's bringing Viking ships to life. Now, this is Top Story. A federal report says that over a span of 150 years, Native American children suffered physical, sexual, and emotional abuse at boarding schools across the U.S. The report probes that history and the U.S. government's own role in it. The Interior Department study says that a number of those schools, which were supported by the U.S. government, caused the deaths of more than 500 children, and it identified some 50 burial sites. It all took place starting in the early 1800s, a time when many tribes were being removed from their ancestral lands. Indigenous children were taken from their families and tribes, made to conform to what was called civil society, and not allowed to speak their native language or engage their native culture. It was part of an effort to force Native Americans to fit into the culture of mainstream America. The report is said to be the first thorough examination of what's known as America's federal residential school system, but it mirrors a tragic history exposed in Canada last year. The graves of more than 200 Native children were found at a boarding school in British Columbia.
We just heard the heart-wrenching information uncovered in a recent report about Native American boarding schools. Atrocities took place, in some cases unknowingly, but in others it seems with the intention of doing harm. It's a sobering reminder of the fallen world we live in. To understand how these schools started, we need a little understanding of that period in history. From 1800 to 1850, the population of the United States exploded, growing from about 5 million to more than 23 million, due to factors like high birth rate and immigration. Waves of people started moving west in search of land and new opportunities. Settlers butted heads with Indians from the days when they first arrived in America. There's a long list of battles in our nation's history. But conflicts became more frequent with westward expansion. One U.S. government solution was to set aside land for Native Americans, directing and often forcing tribes to move into regions called reservations. The claim was that those lands were established in order to allow Native Americans to govern themselves and to maintain some of their cultural and social traditions. But the policy simply created more conflict. Many believed one solution was assimilation, meaning Native peoples would conform to a mainstream American way of life. And what better way to do it than to start them young? Beginning in the 1860s and 70s, Native children were put in education institutions, many run by Christian churches, to elevate them from what early Americans considered a primitive way of life. Students received basic education and learned Christian principles. They were taught work skills and American values, like individualism, an idea at odds with their native way, which emphasized communal ownership. When Native kids used their native language and habits, it was common for them to be disciplined, sometimes quite harshly. Students could have their privileges revoked, they could be confined, or they might endure physical punishment. We can't know the hearts of the individuals who ran the federal Indian boarding schools or those who taught in them, but the government's own report exposes a failure to value the culture and the experience of other peoples.
I'm a product of 10 years of boarding school myself. I learned everything about the European American culture, its history, language, civilizations, math, science, but I didn't know anything about who I was as a Native person. I came out not knowing who I was.
Both Canada and the U.S. continue to research boarding school sites and to study the legacy of Indigenous boarding schools, knowing that to examine past errors is one way to prevent making mistakes in the future.
Make sure to check out the full site at worldwatch.news. You can try out the show free for a month. And thanks for watching, everybody. I'm the Big Bash. Remember, whatever the news, the purpose of the Lord will stand.